This is lesson 1-4, Tools for Mathematics, the parent help video for grade 3 everyday math. We're going to talk about 4 different vocabulary words that come up in our lesson today. The first one is toolkit, and the toolkit is basically a set of tools, a set of math tools. And you might be wondering, well, what's a math tool? And a math tool is like a ruler, for example. Okay, we might use one of the small clocks, we might use a calculator. All of these things are something that we would find in a mathematical toolkit. The next one's mathematical tools. Well, it's just exactly what I was explaining. It's like a calculator, for example, or a ruler. Those are some examples. There are many others. The other words we talk about are inch. Okay, so speaking of ruler, we have one here. An inch is a unit of measurement that is about this long. Here, that's an inch. Okay, and a centimeter is a unit of measurement that is shorter than an inch. Okay, in fact, 1 inch equals about 2.5 centimeters. Okay, 2.54 centimeters to be exact. But these are our vocabulary words for today. As far as skills that we want kids to understand, we want kids to be able to use a calculator to solve multi-digit addition and subtraction problems. So let's say I have the problem 364 plus 925. Okay, of course we want kids to be able to add this too, but we also want them to know how to put it into the calculator and just say, well, 364 plus 925, that equals, and get an appropriate answer. So 1,289, and yes, I would say that that answer makes sense. So if we also want them to be able to subtract, so if the number was 925 minus 364, be able to put that into the calculator and also come up with a good answer for that, that's going to work. We want them to be able to measure line segments to the nearest inch and nearest centimeter. So if I have a line segment here, say it's that long, we want kids to be able to look at this and say, okay, well, the nearest inch, well, that's pretty much about 2 inches. Okay, so 2, and I'll use the abbreviation for inches, so 2 inches. And how many centimeters is that? Well, that's about, to the nearest centimeter, it's a little bit more than 5 centimeters, but we can say it's about 5 centimeters. Okay, so either of those measurements will work, and we want kids to be able to do that. We want also for kids to be able to tell the time to the nearest half hour. All right, so they look at the clock and they see this. We want them to know that when this longhand is on the 6, it means some sort of it's a half hour, some sort of 30. Okay, so 2:30, but also we want them to be able to tell on the hour. So after it's done 2:30, it goes to 3. So we want them to be able to tell those times. We want them to be able to tell the quarter hours. So every time 15 minutes goes by, we want them to be able to say, okay, this is 3:15, and then of course 3:30. My clock is a little bit stuck here. And then 3:45. So we want them to know 45, 3:45. And then, of course, 4 o'clock. We want them to be able to tell time in those increments. And we also would like kids to know time to the nearest 5 minutes. So we want kids to recognize that each time this longhand moves to a large number, that it's gone for 5 minutes. Okay, so each of these little tick marks is a minute. Even if it's here, we're happy if kids will say it's 4:05. Okay, or if it's here, well, that's close to the 2. It's close to the 2, so well, it's about 4:10. We want them to be able to count by 5s around the clock, so 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, and then they know there's 60 minutes in 1 hour, so the time has to fall somewhere in those 60 minutes. We also want them to use the pattern block template to identify and draw 2-dimensional shapes. So the pattern block template, it's a small plastic piece, and it has different shapes in it. It's going to have like a square, it will have a rectangle, okay, it'll have trapezoid, for example. It'll have many different shapes in it, and we want kids to be able to use this template, put their pencil around here, trace what's in there, okay, and I believe they're labeled right on the template, so that will help kids. That will help kids also, but if they're not, even if they're not, we want them to know these basic kind of shapes. So as far as how you can help with this at home, anything that you can give kids to measure will help. Have them measure it in inches, have them measure it in centimeters. Okay, also having them tell the time. Please ask your kids the time, or have them volunteer to tell you the time on an analog clock like this throughout different points in the day. One of the earlier lessons we talked about telling time on a digital clock. That's also important. So have them tell you both. And also just having them identify and draw different shapes for you. Kids love to design, use shapes to design different sorts of creatures, different sorts of pictures, even houses or buildings. They'll use shapes to design. So you can talk to them about what kind of shapes they're using in their pictures, and let them, trace around different shapes. They really like that a lot. So it's a lot of fun, and just using the language that we're using here today. So this is lesson 1-4, Tools for Mathematics, the Parent Help video for grade 3 Everyday Math.